Beep boop. Hey guys. This video will be talking about why I am a great storyteller but not a good trainer. And this relates directly to my teaching. So, this last week I had a very, very magical experience, in which case I got to see my first Swedish students go to their prom/graduation dinner. It happened at a manor house, which one of my students lives in. Yeah, super weird. Place is huge and amazing and pretty, and maybe I'll do a different video on that place. But during the ceremony, the part where we ate and had speakers in between, I was given an award, and that award means the world to me. It came with a cup. You can't really read that because it reads as backwards, but it's Best Storyteller, Mr. Carly. And it's got a YouTube thing and a Texas on the bottom there. I also got an adorable placard. And this part is the part that makes me happiest. Basically a hero medal from Wreck-It Ralph saying, "Do our best, you're the best." And inside, I believe, is chocolate. Yes, it's chocolate. So I earned that. And I was given, it was a night of highs and lows, because I was given this medal and it was very, very special. I got a very loud ovation, louder than many others, if I may console myself with that. But it was followed directly after by one of my favorite students pulling me aside and saying, "Mr. Carly, you're a great storyteller, but you're a shit math teacher." So that was mildly heartbreaking, but I realized some things about myself because of this. I have been grappling for a little while with the fact that I am not a super great teacher when it comes to certain age levels. And recently it has kind of crystallized as to why. There are many students I'm very good at helping. I am very much a good sage type teacher. I know lots of things. I can explain those things. Most people who are go-getters and who are near the middle to high part of the pack are happy with my storytelling method of teaching, because I lead them with analogy and connection and lead them to their own voyages of discovery. However, I am really garbage at training. And training is something that many, many students, especially at a certain grade level, absolutely need. And training students, just like training animals, requires really only two things. A purpose that you are training them toward, and consistency. That's doing the same thing every time, over time, and giving them the exact same, the model to go with. And my wife is amazing at this. She says outside of her class the same thing every day, every class. And so much so that it's become a caricature in the class. When they're trying to pretend to be her, they say the exact same thing every day. And it's awesome because those kids always know what to expect. And within the classroom, there's a great deal of creativity required. But outside the classroom and in the lead up, always the same. I don't do that. I'm terrible at that. I'm terrible at coming back to things. I'm terrible at giving something, establishing a pattern, staying with that pattern, continuing that pattern, etc. Now, I can do it if there's only a few patterns. And I recognize patterns very well, but when it comes to creating them, when it comes to making certain that the students have the same thing over and over in repetition and response and all of that sort of stuff, then I'm good at that. And I'm good at knowledge, and I'm good at giving that knowledge to my students. But I'm not good at repeating and going back and checking for understanding more than a few times, unless the student shows initiative and comes to me. And if a student comes to me, then I'm like a dog with a bone. I can gnaw at it and tear at it and until it's done. But if a student doesn't have that initiative, if a student doesn't take that agency, if a student just kind of sits there quietly, then I'm probably going to think that they know it. And that's a problem because for a certain age group with a certain set of kids, that level of trusting them to make their own acknowledgement. And don't get me wrong, I go around the room and I check, and I go around individually and I go ahead and I do it. I just don't do it at the level that a teacher should. And the problem is that while I am a very good teacher to more than half the class, so that we have time for conversation and we have time for examples and we have time for analogies that are related to the work, there are some people who get left behind by this particular thing because they haven't been forced to practice enough, because they haven't been forced to. And this begins the conversation. There is an old school versus new school argument in education. And I think I've mentioned this before about training versus education, training versus learning. And when a student is trained, that means that they know that before class, this is what you do. When you come into class, you pull out your paper, you take out this, you set your pen at a direct 90-degree angle to the bottom of the desk. You draw lines in between using a ruler between your assignments. You make certain that there are no errant drawings on your work. When you raise your hand before you talk, and when the teacher calls upon you, you must preface your conversation, and that's training. And for a lot of students, it's very, very good. For a lot of students, it's great that they know exactly what to do in any given situation. And that was the old way of teaching is, you raised your hand, you asked questions in a certain manner, you had a very, very specific way that you had to do everything. And that's what we used to do. But learning doesn't always come from training. And there are lots of people that learn much better in a non-silent classroom, in a classroom in which you can't hear the clock tick. And there are many students who learn much better in a situation where there's a little bit of chaos, where people can be excited about the thing that they're learning, where people can be involved with the thing that they're learning, rather than sitting at their desks, listening to the teacher talk, and then attempting to do the thing the teacher did, and raising their hand if they have questions, but not having a greater, more valid discussion among the group. So the problem is that there is currently this tug of war going on in between training and active learning. And a lot of the training teachers think that the active learning is just insane. And a lot of the active learning teachers think that the training teachers are just so hopelessly out of touch that there's no coming back. And the problem is that this battle is going on in every school that I know. And a lot of the schools in the US, the principals used to be teachers. And when they were teachers, the only kind of education there was training. So a lot of them are firmly on the side of training, and it's really hard to go against your boss when your boss believes one school of thought and all the new teachers who have no seniority and therefore no experience and therefore no respect from the older teachers want to do this other thing. So that's why, in many ways, I am a lovely sage. I am a decent educational mentor, but not great at officially the dialectic style teaching. So there we go. My weaknesses. Beep boop.